Hello and welcome to round 6 here at U.S. Nationals. Maria Bartholdi in the booth with Reed Duke. And here it is, our first round of draft here in this tournament. Names need to be swapped around there. Brian Braun-Duin is on the right side of your screen. Sam Black on the left side of your screen. Both players currently undefeated here in this tournament, 5-0 for both of them, which is an excellent start to the tournament, of course. And we talked a little bit about Sam's deck being sort of a blue, base blue, almost mono blue with a little white and a little bit black. What about BBD? What is he doing?
Brian has just what I would call a very normal-looking blue-red Wizards deck. He's got a couple nice cards and not short on playables, just a lot of bread and butter stuff, but also not the deck you dream about the night before the tournament. Just a pretty normal-looking version of one of the stock archetypes in Dominaria draft.
I don't know about you, but I definitely dream of casting blue-red Wizards or drafting that deck rather. It's my favorite deck in this format. Would you say it's kind of like a B minus blue-red Wizards deck?
Yeah, I'll just give it a rock solid B. This
okay.
is just, if we had prepared a slide of what does a normal blue-red Wizards deck look like, Brian's would be mostly it. He's got an Adeliz the Cinder Wind as a highlight, high count of Wizards, but also touching into some powerful non-wizard creatures in Academy Drake and Cloud Reader Sphinx. Just generally solid Magic deck.
All right, Sam Black here, starting things off with a pair of Relic Runners in his deck, which has plenty of ways to make those creatures unblockable. Bodalian Arcanist in play for Brian Braun-Duin, as well as an unkicked Academy Drake, just a little 2/2 flyer for 3. And Sam Black showing us that it's just this easy, all 4 of his colors here. And right into Teshar, so boom, unblockable, hit you for 4 down to 16.
Now, we actually know that Sam has a relatively tame deck. He made a lot of discipline picks. His mana's pretty good since he's mostly monocolor and has 2 Skittering Surveyors. But I'm sure, Brian and Sam know each other, and Brian's just shaking his hand. Of course, Sam Black has 2 Relic Runners and 3 different colors of basic lands in play.
Must be nice. Brian Braun-Duin, though, not a bad start for him either. Academy Drake, perfectly serviceable 3-drop.
Definitely, and the Arcanist is good for a couple of reasons. We did mention him having just a pretty rock-solid Wizards deck, so that's going to enable his Journey Mages, of which he has 2 of each color. That's pretty nice. He's got an Adeliz the Cinder Wind. He also has 2 5-drop instants and sorceries that the Arcanist can help cast, including Weight of Memory and Fiery Intervention.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that card it can sneak up on you if you forget that it can tap for mana. Academy Journey Mage here is going to send a Relic Runner back to Sam Black's hand at the end of the turn there after a tiny little attack.
Yeah, funny that Brian has to bounce the cheaper creature, because if he bounced the Teshar, it would just re-trigger the Relic Runners and allow Sam to continue chipping in for 4.
And here's a Time of Ice from Sam Black. It's going to lock down that Academy Drake and once again enable an unblockable attack from that Relic Runner and enable an attack from Teshar as well, getting in for 4 once again.
Yeah, so this is just exactly how Sam drew it up. He wants to get onto the board early with some creatures and then curve into either Time of Ice, of which he has 2 copies, or Karn's Temporal Sundering to help him win the race. And you see from Brian's position here, he can't block. The Time of Ice is tapping down his only creature that could block the Academy Drake. The Relic Runners are triggering pretty persistently, and you just can't race against Time of Ice. It's not like Brian can turn all his creatures sideways and hope to deal 19 damage before Sam kills him, particularly when Chapter 3 is threatening to come off.
All right, so we've got an opt here from Brian Braun-Duin. We're going to put one on the bottom. And I think he drew his other Academy Journey Mage.
Well, that's good for him. He really needs to defend himself by taking creatures off of the battlefield and not by trying to block. So Journey Mage is just what the doctor ordered.
How about a Keldon Raider here? We're going to enable a Rummage.
It's okay. It allows him to keep adding to the board and dig for some removal spells. Also, Brian has a lot of creatures with Enters the Battlefield's abilities, which he might be able to use to his advantage. Since the Time of Ice, it is mandatory to bounce creatures.
Sometimes Time of Ice can get a little tricky when there's certain creatures, like a Journey Mage, that you do not want going back to your opponent's hand, or a Keldon Raider for that matter, which was what's going to get iced down right now. Brian Braun doing down to 12 life. An attack here once again from Teshar is going to send him down to 10. All right, Sage of Latinum and Relic Runner is going to hit the table once again. And if I'm BBD, I'm so worried about those Relic Runners.
Brian is main decking one particular card that's going to really excel in this matchup. That's a Radiating Lightning.
Oh, really?
Often you see that card relegated to the sideboard in Dominaria draft, but Brian's playing it because he has Adeliz, he has a deck that's good for racing, and just generally wanted one more interactive spell. But it's going to really shine against not just Sam, but also Wyatt Darby, two of the drafters that we watched. Wyatt's got a black-green Saproings deck, and Sam with the blue-based aggro deck featuring these Relic Runners and Artificer's Assistants, and it could easily come up that Brian picks off two creatures while dealing some damage directly to Sam.
Journey Mage here is going to trade off with one of those Relic Runners. A nice attack there from BBD, and here's Naban, Dean of Iteration, and an Academy Drake. Number 2. Naban, of course, was Andrew last weekend in coverage told me originally named Naban Dean of Symmetry because I thought that was kind of neat, the effect that he has as kind of a symmetrical effect, but he wasn't a 2/2, so they figured they couldn't possibly name him that.
Interesting.
That is funny.
So I thought I caught a glimpse of Shivan Fire in Brian's hand.
Oh,
and
really?
If that is the case, it's very good for him, but I'm curious why he's waiting on killing that Teshar, because Sam pretty willfully traded off Relic Runner against Academy Journey Mage, and now if he has a historic spell, he gets to return the Relic Runner directly to play. Which this whole sequence is very problematic for Brian. The Rona combining with the Teshar to return both of the permanents that Brian just had to work so hard to fight through a moment ago.
Wow. This is straight up value here. And then Rona is going to be able to exile that Time of Ice. Wow, that's one of my favorite things. Yeah, and it looks like BBD here really considering firing this off.
Yeah.
Relic Runner is going to attack, though.
Why did he wait on it? And now he's in a situation where he's almost tempted to point it at the Rona so that the Time of Ice can't be recast. But then what if another historic card brings the Rona back to the battlefield? Teshar are just so powerful in Sam's deck and such a problematic card. It really demands your first removal spell. All
right, well, here's Shivan Fire on that Rona.
Okay, so Brian's plan is pretty clear. Let's just hope that Sam sputters out a little bit and doesn't continue finding historic cards, because he's not going to be able to beat the Relic Runners and the Teshar if Sam does find artifacts or legendaries.
Brian Braun doing down to 8 life to Sam Black's 16 here in this first round of draft. Going to consider his play here, too.
There's a lot of really powerful things Brian can do with that Naban in play. And in fact, after seeing how strong that card in his deck, I think I want to upgrade his grade to a B+.
Okay.
Just the Naban and the Adeliz are both cards that Brian's going to be able to leverage to wins anytime they survive. I did mention 2 G2 Journey Mage and 2 Academy Journey Mage, which both just become brutal with Naban.
All right, we're going to start things off, though, with a Fiery Intervention, taking down Teshar here, sort of clearing the way for Brian. He's going to attack in with that Academy Drake for 2, knock Sam Black down to 14. But yeah, if he played a Journey Mage, whew. Once I got discard 4 from a kicked Skin Witch while Naban was in play.
No.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was done by none other than Brian Kibler. Relic Runner here enabling another attack in for 4 off of that Jousting Lance from Sam Black. Brian Braun doing down to 4. If he plays one more, that is it.
So Brian's got to think something's up here with Sam not spending his mana to equip the Jousting Lance.
Right. And remember, one of these cards that Sam Black drafted that I'm constantly nervous about. There's Rav Caption in his deck
Uh-huh.
and Naru Meha.
Yep.
So maybe Brian Bronwyn's spidey senses are tingling right about now.
His plan of hope Sam doesn't have anything good in hand is not working out well, as Sam had Jousting Lance, already effectively unbeatable card for Brian, and Sam is not even equipping because he has something else to spend his mana on.
All right, so we're going to kick an Academy Drake here, but yes, I had it. Rav Capuchin in hand for Sam Black is going to seal the deal. Those Relic Runners unblockable once again, and Sam Black is going to pick up game 1 here versus Brian Braun-Duin. Esper Historic versus Blue-Red Wizards. All right, so players here shuffling up for game 2, but that was kind of cool to see Sam Black's deck in action after we watched the draft. It came together pretty nicely in that game. Those Relic Runners were MVPs.
Definitely. That's when Sam is able to do that, play out a couple creatures, and then have Time of Ice plus one of his more powerful rare cards, like the Teshar Ancestor's Apostle really pulled a lot of weight in that game. That's exactly what his deck wants to do. It's just when he can't stick those creatures that I would worry a little bit about having the Time of Ices and the equipment with no bodies to support them. You pointed out really well that the Time Walk effect of Karn's Temporal Sundering, which is Sam's best card, really does require you to have a board presence in order to leverage it to its full effect. So we'll see, if Sam can continue having the games play out like that. His deck is very hard to stop. Any opponent that's relying on trying to block is going to have a rough day.
Brian Braun-Duin playing Blue-Red Wizards deck does have some tools to be able to slow Sam Black down, though. We saw those Academy Journey Mages try and kind of set him back a turn, but the problem was Sam was also playing the tempo game, using cards with like Time of Ice, and just replayed them, played Historic Spells, swung in for unblockable damage.
Brian was actually passing to Sam in this draft. The two were sitting next to each other, and we saw Sam first pick In Bolus's Clutches, one of the premier blue cards of the format. But sadly for him, the player passing to him was also blue, so he had to bob and weave a little bit before he found himself in this Esper colors deck.
There's a lot of blue drafters at this table as well.
Yep, that's true.
Wyatt Darby, we saw him drafted a pretty sweet Sapperling deck with Slimefoot and Demon Lord Belzenlock, which, is an okay card, I've heard.
Yeah, that's one of the better ones.
So what does Brian Braun-Duin want to focus on coming in here to Game 2 after having played against Sam Black's deck one time?
I would definitely consider this a racing matchup where you're going to have a lot easier time winning if you can have a good start rather than having to fight from behind in the mid-game, particularly against cards like Time of Ice. So I think the two ways Brian can win are to either have answers for Sam's early creatures, that Shivan Fire, that Radiating Lightning. Those are two of the best cards that he can see in his opening hand. Or alternatively, he does have a pretty fast deck for himself. So if he has a nice curve on the play, he can just run Sam down. Sam's deck is not particularly good at blocking either. So this Game 2 where Brian gets to be on the play, I'd say he has two realistic routes to victory. And then in Game 3, he's going to be more hoping that either Sam stumbles or he can have those well-placed removal spells.
These players, by the way, will play out this draft today. 2 more rounds after this. And then we're going to kick things off with a draft tomorrow morning as well. Draft in the morning. Sounds great to me. Followed up by a couple of rounds of Standard before we cut to our top 8. Here at U.S. Nationals, top 2 finishers head to the team for the World Magic Cup in December this year. It's going to be in Barcelona in Spain. Very, very excited for that tournament.
Yeah, it should be great.
Have you been to Barcelona, Reed?
I love Barcelona, one of my favorite cities.
Why is that?
There's a lot to like about Barcelona. It's very beautiful. It's on the water. It's got great architecture, great culture. People love to have fun there.
Great food.
Great food, too, yeah.
Very important. All right, players taking a look here at their opening hands for game number 2, and they both like them, and we're off. Brian Braun-Duin versus Sam Black. Naban, Dean of Iteration, is the first play here for BBD. And Sam Black just has a couple of islands in play and has to pass the turn back over to Brian. There's a look at Naban on your screen right now, which a card that kind of seemed underwhelming before we really dove a little deeper into Dominaria and exactly how powerful it could be.
Yeah, this is probably the second or third strongest card in Brian's deck with those Journey Mages, both red and blue varieties.
Naban here hitting for 2, Sam Black down to 18. No follow-up play from Brian, able to find a Plains here, though, for Sam Black. Notice a Time of Ice in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
And a Swamp.
This is what I was talking about with having to play from behind. It's, not counting Sam Black out. He's only at 18, and his deck's full of powerful cards. He can definitely fight back into it. But it's not his preferred way to play the game. He would much rather drop a few creatures and then push that advantage while keeping his opponent in check.
Oh,
I guess it's working out well because any creature that he would have deployed would be right back in his hand right now.
Oh, it's the saddest Academy Journey Mage of all when it doesn't get to bounce a creature, but I guess why not?
I have 2 triggers.
Yep, and I can't use either of them.
I'm not going to use either one.
Oh, it's painful. Befuddle was used to shrink down that Naban to save Sam Black some life and draw a card. Not the ideal, use that you're hoping for when you put Befuddle in your deck, but hey, why not? Here's a Relic Runner to follow up for Sam Black.
It's actually off of the sideboard for Sam.
Oh, really?
Which I love watching players when they board in a card like that because it really shows you that they have a particular vision for how the game might go. And Sam might have been thinking, okay, we both have a lot of high power, low toughness creatures that are going to get into combat against one another. And if I can, befuddle the Academy Journey Mage that attacks into my Relic Runner, that's the type of exchange that can lead to winning the game.
Ooh, Sam Black just drew his Karn's Temporal Sundering.
Needs to do a bit of work before you can cast it to good effect.
Yep. There's Relic Runner and a Jousting Lance. And has to pass the turn back over to Brian, who has been able to really get out on the front foot here. A couple of Journey Mages in play as well as that Naban. And Shivan Fire is going to deal with that Relic Runner. Ooh,
wow.
Talk about sideboarding. Here you go, Healing Grace from Sam Black.
Yeah, excellent card for a racing matchup like this. Look, Sam gets to buffer his life total, save the Relic Runner. Now it's tough for Brian to even attack this turn. I mean, he's going to, but it doesn't look quite as appealing as it would have if Sam had no blockers and 3 less life.
Yeah, I would not have expected a Healing Grace. Okay, well, looks like he's kind of going a little bit back and forth between entering the attack step here.
Yeah, I like it. 4 damage down to 12, attack with everything. Sam is obliged to block one of the 3 power guys.
Journey Mage is going to deal a couple of damage to Sam. Down to 7. In Bolus's clutches.
Yep, that's a way to turn around a game.
On the Gitu Journey Mage. All right. Well, I mean, it's not the greatest target that was ever created, but why not? And I can also cast my Time Walk next turn if I want to.
Great point. In Bolus's clutches does make the creature legendary.
But Fiery Intervention is going to deal with that plan quite handily. In for another 5. Sam Black down to 2. Arona pulled to the front of his hand. Time of Ice as well to try and save him some time. All right, so he can get two plays off here.
And he needs to answer both attackers in order to survive.
Okay, so we'll ice down Naban. And here will come Rona. Exiling in Bolus's clutches. Unfortunately, she is not long for this world.
Yeah, Sam could have considered just not even exiling a card,
right,
because the Rona is it's basically a forced play that Brian has to attack and Sam has to block. But he could, potentially return the Rona later in the game with something like Teshar and benefit from having the in-bolus clutches still in his graveyard.
Okay, well, there's the block, and Brian Braun just passes the turn right back. Time of Ice ticks up to 2, no target. And BBD can just be thinking, why play anything? Taps 2, Vodalian Arcanist. Chapter 3 resolves here on the Time of Ice. And there's a Juggernaut from Sam Black. And he's going to equip it with the Jousting Lance.
Sadly, this is not a race that Sam wants to get into, although the Juggernaut always wants to get into a race.
Ooh, look at that OG Juggernaut. Boom. Well, in it comes as it has to for 7. Brian Braun knocked down to 13, but he's got a couple of attackers here, and Sam Black has nobody back to block and no removal spells, so he will pack him up. Brian Braun taking down game number 2 here to tie things up. Sam Black versus BBD here in round number 6.
So we've seen both cases for Sam's deck in the first 2 games. The first case in game 1 was the effectively unstoppable, really nice curve out beatdown deck with powerful top end cards, Time of Ice to force the opponent, into a corner. But then the second game, he didn't have an early creature. His deck's not very good at blocking. And then towards the late game, he flooded a little bit. He had a Jousting Lance and a Karn's Temporal Sundering that he couldn't really get traction on. So these are the risks associated with his deck. But for game 3, he's on the play. And if he can have another nice draw like game 1, he's gonna advance to 6-0. We'll see.
And Time of Ice there was kind of an example, especially game 1, we saw it be excellent against Brian. And there in game 2, it just was basically, I guess it bought him a turn. It didn't do enough. And when I first saw the set, I saw a card like that, and I'm like, yes, I'm putting it in every deck. I love this card. This is exactly what I want to do. I love tempoing people. But here, sometimes people say, well, there you go. You paid 4 mana, and you did pretty much nothing. And that was kind of an example of that as well.
Right. Yeah, I would say Time of Ice is a really good version of an effect that you only sometimes want in Limited, because sometimes in Limited the games just stall out, and you have to be prepared to squeeze every drop of value and card advantage out of each one of your spells. And in the long run, Time of Ice doesn't provide card advantage. It's really card disadvantage. And in particular, if your opponent's able to re-trigger and enters the battlefield ability off of it, then you can get yourself in some real trouble if the game plays out a certain way.
We saw the players sideboard, a single card here and there heading into game number 3. Are you making many changes between games 2 or 3 based on if you're on the play or the draw, usually in Limited?
Sometimes, but I would say it's pretty minimal. In Constructed, you get every single card in Standard in your toolbox, and you get to pick the best one tailor-made for every situation. But in Limited, your pool of cards is a lot smaller and a lot weaker, so you're more often going to face a situation where it's like, okay, these are just my best cards, plain and simple, and I don't really have that much to change. But you can certainly do small changes here and there. An example is Sam's Healing Grace. That might be a card that he wanted when he was on the draw and it's anticipated being on the back foot, but maybe he'll swap it out for something more aggressive and more proactive. Now that he's on the play, we'll see. Nope. There it is right in front of his hand.
Yep, he kept it in. But he does not like that 7, only 1 land in that hand from what I could see there for Sam Black. So he's going to go down to 6 here, taking a mulligan. Brian Braun happy with the 7.
So, Maria, we got the names straightened out, but if you watch tournament coverage frequently, you don't need name tags for these players. They're definitely 2 of the biggest name guys in the room. 2 of the premier American players. Sam Black, in fact, has represented the United States on the national team before.
We've had so many of them in our feature match area today. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's no coincidence. We have our guys on the floor, guys and girls on the floor, picking the feature matches. And they've done a good job giving us top quality players that are important to the history of American Magic. Sam Black actually, the year that he was on the team, we won. We were the team world champions. Yeah, it was Sam Black, Michael Jacob, and Paul Cheon.
Oh, that's awesome. Paul Cheon won a tournament? Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't just one of Randy Buehler's team super leagues.
Incredible. Brian Bronduin, your 2016 world champion, by the way. I was at that tournament. When he won, the game seemed to go on for basically forever.
Man, that was one of the best matches of covered Magic that I've ever watched.
It was so intense.
An epic battle between Brian Bronduin and Marcio Carvalho in effectively a mirror match. But what was it, game 3 or game 4 that went over an hour?
It was so long. It was so tense in the room, too. You could have heard a pin drop at certain times. All right, well, we're underway here for game number 3, the deciding game for the match here. Sam Black, Brian Bronduin, Esper Historic versus Blue Red Wizards. And there's Naban Dean of Veneration on the table for BBD, which can do some very nasty things in his deck, versus a Relic Runner, which is one of the hallmark cards in Sam Black's deck as well. And there we're going to get a trigger here off the Get 2 Journey Mage to be able to deal 2 to Sam Black and attack in for another 2.
Crisp sequencing from Brian to do it before attacking into a possible Gideon's Reproach or, any combat trick that might result in the Nabad dying before Journey Mage can come into play.
And there's that Sage of Latinum from Sam Black. Did make the cut. Be very interested to see it activated at some point. That would just be cool to see. I haven't seen it yet in this format. I believe Sam Black's got his Temporal Sundering in hand too. Not 100% sure, but I think it might be hiding in the back there. There's a Voldalian Arcanist and a Get 2 Lava Runner for Brian Bronduin. Standard playable card.
If it's true that Sam has the Sundering in hand, a huge deciding factor in this game is going to hinge on whether or not he's able to cast it, because the way the board's shaping up, Brian is a bit ahead. He's got some nice stuff on the board. He's got more creatures, and he's got a stacked hand. He actually missed his land drop last turn. However, the game does remain close, and if Sam can pull off a haymaker like the Karn's Temporal Sundering, it could easily swing it in his favor. We'll see. He needs both a source of black, he has a Rona in hand, so he needs a source of black mana to cast that one, or he needs to draw one of his other legends.
All right, the Get 2 Lava Runner here, swinging in.
But Brian, that's only a 1/2.
Brian, what could you be up to? Warlord's Fury already in the graveyard for BBD. He cycled it on turn 1, essentially. And there is Radiating Lightning is what he was up to this whole time. He's going to be able to take down that Relic Runner. And you know what? I guess you're happy with that?
Oh, yeah, you're happy with that. You're using a weak card that you probably got late, as a late pick. You're using it to kill a creature and deal 4 additional damage to your opponent. That's a really nice turn.
All right, Sam Black down to 9 here, and here comes the Skittering Surveyor to find that black mana.
Yeah, that's just what Sam wanted. He's able to find his black mana, now cast his Rona if he would like, and that's fodder for your Sage of Latinum. You might get your wish.
But here's the thing about, if we're dreaming of Karn's Temporal Sundering, this is not really the ideal time to cast it, is it?
No. Sam does want to set up a little bit more, but he can certainly give himself some breathing room. The Time Walk plus bouncing Brian's most threatening permanent. I'm agreeing with you. It's not something Sam's going to cast next turn or probably even the turn after that, but it's something that he can plan around and say, this is my route to victory. If I can get this under the right conditions, this card is powerful enough to turn around a mulligan, a losing situation.
All right, so Brian Braun doing an all-out attack here. Every creature swinging in. 3 mana available for Sam Black. Skittering Surveyor and the Sage back. So we could see a block and a sacrifice and a draw card.
Sure, I think the most face level block is going to be the Sage of Latinam on Naban and the Skittering Surveyor in front of the biggest creature to get sacrificed.
And there we go. Hooray, we did it. We drew a card. It's another Skittering Surveyor, too. And then the Sage of Latinum is going to trade with Naban.
Sam's life total getting dangerously low.
Yes. And there is an Academy Drake. Drew a Juggernaut for the turn.
Well, that's not a great defensive card, but it is something that can win the game in short order when a time walk is involved. So Sam, the Juggernaut might be one piece of setting up a winning race.
Sam Black down to 6 after that attack. All right, and there is the Juggernaut, and there is Rona. We're going to exile the Surveyor underneath Rona and pass the turn back over to Brian. All right, can Sam Black take the wheel and spin this game around here from Brian Braun-Duin, who's only had, by the way, 3 mana available for most of this game. One of the other reasons I kind of like the Wizards deck, as it's able to do its thing, even when you might not have access to as much mana as you would like.
Definitely. We're talking about a format where, Verdant Force sees a lot of play, Thorn Elemental, things like this. And having a deck that can actually operate on 2 and 3 lands is a huge plus.
All right, well, he's able to find land number 4 here, opening the possibility of a card like the Academy Journey Mage. But it looks like a Fiery Intervention is going to be the play here. Takes out the Juggernaut.
And this is huge because it actually forces Rona to trade in combat, which will put Sam one step further away from Karn's Temporal Sundering.
Yeah, so Sam really not happy to see that intervention there. Had been trying to set up his plan and was just one turn away from being able to potentially make it happen if he so chose. So now we've got a Skittering Surveyor, the Temporal Sundering in hand. Is that a Gideon's Intervention? I'm not exactly sure.
It's a white card. Maybe it's the Healing Grace.
Oh, yes, it could be the Healing Grace, excuse me. Sam Black once again finding himself at 2 life. Here being attacked by Brian Braun-Duin's army, and, well, that Academy Drake is enough to seal the deal.
Right, Sam is going to be forced to produce a Flying Blocker or a removal spell, or a Healing Grace, in order to survive the turn.
Looks like that's probably what's in order here. Brian Braun-Duin's Wizards deck gave it kind of a B+, but showing us how it can be kind of lean and mean.
Yeah, Brian really able to keep the pressure on despite being a little bit stuck on mana and not drawing any of his really most impressive cards. We haven't seen the Adelies in all 3 games.
Academy Drake and Gitu Lava Runner hit the red zone for Brian. And there's that Healing Grace you mentioned. It's going to save him from the brink of defeat here this turn. Karn's Temporal Sundering left in Sam Black's hand. Academy Drake proving its power too at being a card that is great on 3, great when you kick it. All right, another Lava Runner hitting the table for Brian.
Wow, Sam found Merfolk Trickster, which is a nice way to buffer your life total when you're really far behind like this. And it actually can trade for the Academy Drake by making it lose flying.
All right, so Sam looks like he's pausing Brian before he heads into combat.
Yeah, he needs to use it on something because otherwise he can't survive the attack.
Down to 3 life. The Academy Drake gets tapped down. Won't attack. The rest of the army will here for Brian. All right, so the Trickster able to keep Sam Black alive for another turn here, but Brian keeps the pressure coming, and a Cloud Reader Sphinx is the follow-up play. Scry 2, I love this card.
Yeah, amazing card.
Scry 2 and just a threat of its own in the air at 3-4. And that will do it. Brian Braunduin picking up this match 2-1 over Sam Black here in the first of our draft rounds at U.S. Nationals. All right, well, we got to see Sam Black's deck kind of do its thing for one game, which was pretty cool, but not really able to pull it together for the other 2 against BBD.
Yeah, so Sam taking his first loss there down to 5-1, but he does have a lot of great stuff going for him in that draft deck, and don't count him out. He could definitely win one or both of the next 2 rounds and go into day 2 in pretty good position. Brian
Braunduin's red-blue Wizards deck, we got to see sort of what's kind of like a hallmark red-blue Wizards deck in action there that game, and we'll see more action in our feature match area from draft coming up in just a few minutes. Hi there, welcome back to the booth here. Coverage of U.S. Nationals. Maria Bartholdi and Reed Duke hanging out with you. We just saw a match between Sam Black and Brian Braun-Duin. BBD came out on top 2-1. But we've got more magic for you. It's time walk time here from our first round of draft in the tournament. We saw standard this morning. Well, it's draft right now. Let's take a look. Seth Manfield versus Chad Sarquiz. 20-18. As we get underway here in game number 1. And we did see Seth Manfield draft as well. And from just watching that draft, we didn't actually call it. It didn't seem to turn out so well for Seth.
Yeah, Seth was in a tough spot. His pack 1 didn't give him any real direction, and then he got to a point in the draft where he sort of just had to pick something, and he went with white-black. He has a totally functional deck, but just not anything you're very excited about.
Mesa Unicorn here added to the team for Manfield.
So Chad was on the opposite side of Sam Black. So we had BBD passing to Sam Black, passing to Chad. So 2 blue drafters. You can expect Chad maybe got some nice stuff in the Jund colors. In particular, Sam passed a Siege Gang Commander.
Oh, that's right. All right, so a bit of a clue there. And a mountain in play already for Chad.
Quick glance over the deck list indicates that Chad has an extremely powerful deck with kind of sketchy mana.
Oh, really? Okay, can you give us a highlight?
Well, if I had to write a narrative of what happened, I would imagine that Chad was green-black and then just couldn't resist when he saw the Siege Gang Commander.
Sure.
But the end result is that he's got sort of just a 3-color deck with the double red mana cost, and he's making it work. He's got a Skittering Surveyor and 2 copies of Landwar Envoy, but it's not pretty.
All right, well, a kick to Sapling Migration is going to add 4 little sappy friends here to the table for Chad. Versus Seth Manfield's got going on here a Cabal Evangel, which I haven't seen make a deck in quite a while, a Drudge Sentinel. Same could be said for that. Stronghold Confessor, though, is going to get into the red zone here. 3/3 with Menace. Valid Soothsayer in play as well for Chad, which can be excellent if the game goes a little bit long.
Yeah, this is not the situation or maybe even the matchup that Seth really wanted. The highlight of his deck, the thing that he does have going for him, is he has nice removal.
Case in point, Vicious Offering.
Yeah, exactly. However, a card like Sapling Migration is not what he wants to see because you can't really answer that with removal. And Valid Soothsayer, super powerful when the game goes long. You see Seth having to 2-for-1 himself to get rid of the Soothsayer, and there's a Memorial to Folly right there on Chad's side of the battlefield. So, Seth is having a hard time pushing damage, and he's just going to be way down on resources in the long run once Chad is able to cast out his hand and use his Memorial there.
All right, so separating out the mana here for Chad, and we're going to cast our Skittering Surveyor. Go find our second mountain. And there it is. And if you're Seth Manfield, your mind is just, all right, well, what did I pass? What could those 2 mountains be in there for? Are we thinking Fight with Fire? Are we thinking Siege Gang Commander? Are we thinking just Shivan Fires?
It actually is worth noting that there's a special policy for these players in the feature match that they do get to see each other's card pools.
Oh, that's a good point.
That's to even the playing field so that the players who are featured drafters aren't at an information disadvantage. So they're playing, slightly different Magic than some of the players on the floor who don't know one another's deck lists. And I actually wonder if Sam Black, who we saw lose the previous round, is a little bit of a victim of that. It's a shame that the opponents get to know about Karn's Temporal Sundering ahead of time and play accordingly.
Has that ever...
it's worth pointing out that Sam got that Karn's Temporal Sundering pretty late, so
Yes,
a
he
lot
did.
of the players saw and passed on that, and notes around.
There's Pegasus Courser here for Seth Manfield. Memorial to Folly is going to get cracked. We're going to send the Soothsayer back to hand for Chad. And is that a Multani in his hand? No, it's not. Sorry, I spoke too soon. Sometimes a little hard to see the cards from our vantage point. That'd be some spice. Soothsayer's going to hit the table once again. 2 mana still available. Able to draw a card if he wants to. Life total is 20 to 15 yet, but not an accurate representation of the story that we're telling this game, as Chad is firmly in the driver's seat here.
Seth's most potent attacker was that Cabal Stronghold Confessor, but Menace not so impressive against the 8 creatures on Chad's side of the battlefield.
Do you think that Pegasus Courser and Mesa Unicorn could start doing some work together?
Definitely. Pegasus Courser is a real threat when the game is stalling out like this. It's one of the premier commons for white and one of the cards that these slow black-green Sapperling decks have a hard time with.
And here's a dark bargain for Seth Manfield. He drafted 2 of them. Not sure how many made the final deck. But can you talk a little bit about why cards like Dark Bargain are kind of valued a little more highly in Dominaria than they might be otherwise in other sets?
Yeah, I think we're actually seeing exactly why. It's because Dominaria tends to be slow. There are a lot of archetypes that lend themselves to board stalls on the ground. So you have the time and the life total to play with to use your Dark Bargain. You get to dig for your powerful game-ending cards and just a nice 2-for-1 advantage. We talked about Seth's the strength of his deck being removal. So if he can maybe employ a strategy like I'm going to choose to draw, I'm going to kill your most important stuff, I'm going to get 2-for-1 advantages here, you can really grind his opponent down.
All right, so here we go. We've got a sacrifice of a Sapperling to the Thallid Soothsayer. Pegasus Courser has sent the Stronghold Confessor into the air for a point more of damage here. Seth Manfield happy with the 20 life that he's at. There's a Shivan Fire that Chad drew, and we saw those Shivan Fires kind of going around the table. We saw a few come in front of Wyatt Darby, who kind of tapped on them. He was so sad he couldn't take them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here's an attack from the Envoy and the Croson Druid from Chad Sarquiz. Decision time here for Manfield. Drudge Sentinel.
I like this trade. You know, the Sentinel in the long run can be an effective creature. It can brick wall larger things, but Seth doesn't have a ton of mana. He wants to spend it on other things, and he doesn't want to take 3 a couple times in the meantime. Might as well just trade sooner rather than later.
All right, turn passes back over to Seth Manfield, who's actually leading in life total here. Chad is at 11, Seth at 16 now after that attack.
Now, it seems to me that Chad wants to spend his turn on a kicked Shivan Fire to deal with the Pegasus Courser. But what's not 100% clear is exactly how he wants to time it, because he could wind up taking even more damage if he walks into an Adamant Will. He also, you know, he's incentivized to not let Seth go to combat, because otherwise it'll be too late and Seth will be able to give one of his other creatures flying. So we'll see exactly how Sarquiz decides to navigate this tricky situation.
Yeah, this is a really interesting point in the game right here. We've found timing to be pretty important. And he's just going to let this happen here. Pegasus Courser, Stronghold Confessor, get in for a hit. Perhaps Chad waiting for a better target.
Yeah, I think maybe he has sniffed out an Adamant Will from Seth Manfield. Seth is being pretty careful to keep 2 mana open. So, you know, if you knew for sure that your opponent has Adamant Will, waiting till the end of the turn is a nice way to do it. Although, wow, looks like the Courser goes down, and it's good news for Sarquiz, but it also means that he took a little bit of extra damage.
And there's that Siege Gang commander. that Chad has been splashing for.
Wow, and it's really gonna pull some weight here. Being able to further stabilize the board, represent removal for any annoying flyers that might come down for Seth.
Siege Gang Commander, one of the best cards in the set, widely acknowledged.
Yeah, now I really feel for Seth here. Anyone who's played a lot of Limited has had this experience where you're like, oh man, I'm fighting
so
a good
close.
fight with my Drudge Sentinels and my Cabal Vandals, and I got to play against Siege Gang Commander.
Not fair. All right, so there's the goblins that the Siege Gang Commander comes with. After all, he does need a Siege Gang. But Seth here keeps fighting. Guardians of Koilos hit the red zone along with the Confessor. I mean, he's accurately read that. He just can't sit back and do nothing.
Good, careful block from Sarkwiz.
Sarkwiz is from Kalamazoo, Michigan. Has been playing since Fate Reforged, so a fairly new player. Enjoys traveling and playing competitively. And fun fact, he used to play water polo.
That is a fun fact. That's a really fun fact.
Some might just call it a fact, but I'll take it. And here is probably the best card in all of Seth's deck, Eldest Reborn.
Right, but at least Chapter 1 there, pretty ineffectual against all the tokens on Sarkwiz's side. So what Seth really would love is the Siege Gang Commander to die so he can return it with the Eldest Reborn. But you know what? He doesn't even have red mana of his own, so it's not as effective as it otherwise could be.
Sure.
He might just take back Pegasus Courser and try to cheese out the last few points of damage.
Yeah, I think that looks to be the best target. All right, the Soothsayer is going to get in for a hit here. I like it. And there's Whisper, Blood Liturgist for Sarkwiz. And you know what? I actually love watching this matchup, Chapter 2 here on the Eldest Reborn, especially because Seth's deck is not particularly powerful. Watching him play it is pretty great because, sometimes I think, you know what? There is hope. There is hope if I've drafted kind of a mess and my opponent has a super powerful deck. It can be done.
Absolutely. And that's what separates the, a strong Limited player from a truly elite one like Seth, which is anyone can win when the cards are breaking your way. When you first pick a rare and then the colors open and your draft goes great and you have all these great cards, that's easy mode. Everyone knows what to do when they face that situation. But watching Seth navigate a draft that doesn't go his way, where he's in a tough seat and where he has to work with, with a blunt sword instead of a super sharpened one, that's when you see, real magic being played. That's when you can really learn something.
Okay, another land into play for Seth Manfield. We had a Llanowar Scout on the discard there from Chad Sarkwiz off of Chapter 2 of the Eldest Reborn. Seth here kind of going a little bit in the tank on this next decision. But that Whisper in combination with that Siege Gang Commander has got to be something that is on Seth's mind as well.
Oh, what a brutal combo, Whisper plus Siege Gang.
Yuck. Okay, well, Seth Manfield continues to keep the pressure on here. Chad down to 7 life. He's at 12 himself. Swinging in with the Confessor, the Guardians, and the Mesa Unicorn.
So Chad's priority should be not taking damage, not letting the Siege Gang be stranded in the graveyard. In other words, keeping the Whisper on the battlefield. And perhaps getting a little bit of value. He can do things like block and sack the Goblin to take out the Unicorn, or sack it to the Soothsayer.
Yep, looks like we're going to get an activation here of the Soothsayer to draw a card, not gain life off of that Unicorn's lifelink for Seth Manfield. All right, 1 Goblin down. Take 3, down to 4. Yeah, I'm super impressed with how Seth has played this game. A lot of times you'll see players just get very, very nervous when there's good cards on the battlefield opposite them and just hang back and not attack. Here's a Quende for Seth.
Right, but in reality, you should often do the opposite of that, which is try to shorten the game, try to, keep your foot in the door, keep that door cracked. If there's any way you can sneak through the last few points of damage. And here we see Seth, just look at the cards that he's cast relative to his opponent. They're so much weaker, but Seth has navigated carefully, and I'm not going to say that he's going to win this game, but he could.
Right.
Something could happen that allows him to get through that last 4 points of damage.
Well, we're going to see Chapter 3 of the Eldest Reborn. Next turn, Siege Gang Commander here, taking out Quende. And here's the activation of Whisper. And Siege Gang Commander comes right on back. Just a brutal combination here.
Mm-hmm. Not the crispest sequencing here from Chad. His timing is a little bit strange, and he could have attacked with the 2 Goblin tokens before sacrificing them.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Here's Baloth Gorger. And passes the turn back over to Seth. Here's Chapter 3. We'll find what he wants to get if he's interested in that Pegasus Courser.
Yeah, so, with the disclaimer that I can't see the graveyards too carefully, Seth going to take a look here. It seems like Pegasus Courser is the best bet. The name of the game for Seth is just, chipping in that last 4 points of damage because he doesn't want to play a long game against this Whisper Siege Gang combination.
Sure enough, Pegasus Courser is a choice for Seth. Comes on back. I've seen Whisper be really gross with Slimefoot, but I've never seen this. Yeah,
Whisper is one of the cards that ranges in power level the most based on what you're pairing it with. And when you have a premier rare creature like Siege Gang Commander, it's awesome. I mean, not even to mention that Siege Gang provides the tokens itself to fuel the Whisper.
There's an Aven Sentry for Seth as well, adding to the Air Force.
Yeah, so look at this, Maria. I mean, Seth has 2 flying creatures that can threaten lethal over the course of a couple of turns. Chad has a Siege Gang Commander, but he's only got 2 mountains, so he can't kill them all this turn. And if Seth can time it right, have a Adamant Will at the right time, or sneak through some damage somewhere else, he can definitely win this game that, by all rights, he should have been done for.
All right, here we go. Activation of Siege Gang Commander, targeting that Aven Sentry, so that's going to go down. Ooh, and a Pierce the Sky here from Chad Sarquiz. I think it's been hiding out in his hand for quite a while. And wow, do you see this discipline? There's the Adamant Will from Seth.
Yeah, and Seth wins.
How many people just fire that off on the Aven Sentry?
Not Seth. Seth knows there's one way for him to win this game, and it's with that Pegasus Courser. The Aven Sentry, too vulnerable to a single activation of Siege Gang Commander. My jaw is on the floor. I'm speechless.
That was incredible. Seth Manfield taking down that game versus Chad Sarquiz. But you said it, Reed. By all accounts, he should have lost. Wow, incredible play there with a much less powerful deck. I mean, that's why, he's ranked number 2 in the world.
Yeah, over the course of the past few years, I and, the whole Magic world have watched Seth play a lot, and he's been the perpetrator of some of the most impressive comebacks in Magic. I mean, just amazing stuff, and it's a combination of calm under pressure, never giving up, and also just navigating these really complex situations and keeping the door open for miracles to happen, and a miracle just happened in game number 1 for Seth Manfield to win.
Wow, incredible stuff. Really happy to have watched it. Shivan Fire here taking down Domnon Trapper from Manfield. A Scout and an Envoy getting in for some damage here, knock him down to 15 as we get underway here for game number 2. Seth Manfield currently up a game there. All right, Chainer's Torment here from Seth Manfield. All right.
Yeah, that one's off the sideboard.
A card that initially upon Dominaria coming out, Chad has to read it, people were playing and then quickly kind of realized how enormous of a liability it can be if your creature has any chance whatsoever of being bounced.
That's right. It's a pretty bad card against blue, but I'll tell you, the very first draft of Dominaria I had a red-green beatdown deck. My opponent played Chainer's Torment when they were still at 20 life. So, okay, you're going to drain me for 8 and then make an 11-11. How's my red-green deck going to beat that?
Right.
So I think it is a strong card to consider as a sideboard option against this particular color combination that Sarquiz is playing.
All right, so already in Chapter 2, gaining a couple of life off that Chainer's Torment as well, by the way, up to 15, and here's Quende. Shivan Fire down, Quende in. All right, 5 mana available for Chad. Pierce the Sky in hand, and we're going to make a Dark Bargain. Lose a couple of life. Take a look at some cards here. Oof. And there is one of the reasons that sometimes we don't play that card, and it's Eviscerate.
So Eviscerate ready for the Nightmare Horror token.
All right, so here we go. Seth's going to take a big life hit. You got to search through those tokens, BJ, and try and find a Nightmare Horror. Probably the first time you've had to pull that one out.
Not prepared with a Nightmare Horror. How unprofessional.
I know, right? All right, well, we'll use the card back for the meantime.
I would have been prepared with a Nightmare Horror of every possible power and toughness.
Nightmare Horror, definitely one of the coolest creature token types for sure. All right, so that is an 8/8. And Quende here on the offensive. Getting in. Oh, we found it. There he is. The Nightmare Horror joins the party. Not long for this world, however. With the Eviscerate sitting in Chad's hand.
Yeah, but Eviscerate is an expensive sorcery speed answer, and Seth can add more to the board. The Quende is already getting through uncontested, so it's not a great situation for Chad. Yes, he gets to answer the Nightmare Horror, but he's falling, further and further behind both on the board and in life total, and he's pretty far from being able to attack Seth, which means he can't punish Seth for the lose half your life clause.
All right, the memes keep on coming. Here's Yargle for Seth Manfield. And yeah, so now he's got 2 giant threats essentially on the table. And that Quende, so I guess make that 3. There's Eviscerate. And like you said, it's going to spend quite a lot of Chad's mana in its entire turn here.
So Chad just really crossing his fingers that he can trade or hold off the Yargle with that Llanowar Envoy. But, Seth with 2 copies of Vicious Hunger and a Cast Down, not to mention Adamant Will. There's a lot of ways for this to go badly for Chad, and here's one of them, Cast Down.
All right, here we go. A massive swing here from Seth Manfield. Yargle and Quende getting in. We've got a chump block here. The Scout jumping in front of Yargle. Quende getting in uncontested. And there's Pegasus Courser. Whoo! We do have a Pierce the Sky in hand for Chad. We're going to try and shore up the ground here. Make a couple of And there's the Pierce on the Pegasus Courser. And these Sapperlings are on chump duty. In swings Quende and Yargle for Seth Manfield. All right, so Quende is going to get in for the hit. Yargle is blocked by a Sapperling. Seth just passes the turn back. Chad kind of flicking those cards in hand pretty quickly. Maybe a little stressed out here in this game. Skittering Surveyor hits the table.
So Chad is just hanging on by a thread. You know, when you face this type of situation, the first question you ask yourself is, okay, if Seth has nothing, draws nothing, how can I just cling to life here? Then the second question is, how can I actually come back and stabilize the board and eventually win the game? Now, Chad does have Verdant Force in hand, which is a long-run plan, but he's got a lot of work to do. He's at 2 life, needs to block both these creatures in perpetuity.
All right, back over to Seth Manfield here. Chad Sarquiz on 2 life. Asked him the number of cards in hand. Taking a look quickly through Chad's graveyard. And there's a Blessed Light on the Skittering Surveyor, and that will do it. Handshake, Seth Manfield 2-0 over Chad Sarquiz there. And if you had showed me those deck lists before that game, I would have not have said he would have won.
No, Seth is just great. I can't say enough nice things about the guy as a Magic player. He makes impossible things happen. He's definitely one of the greatest players, of this generation.
All right, well, we've got more Magic coming up in just a few minutes.